You've entered BOOKSTORM with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome back to BOOKSTORM Podcast, book lovers. We are so excited to share a little news with you here today. Guess where BOOKSTORM is being listened to now? 52 countries, 50 states, and 812 cities worldwide, because you, like us, love books and you love great authors like the one we have here with us today, Laura Dave. And we're here to talk about You Know, You Love It, The Last Thing He Told Me. Laura, welcome to BOOKSTORM.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a rainy day in Los Angeles. So this is your fires making me feel cozy and warm, and it's so nice to meet you both.
Well, we're just thrilled to have you. Kristen and I adore this book. And let me give a little bio to our listeners, because a lot of people love your writing. They devour your books, but maybe they don't know some more fun facts about you and some well-deserved honors. So Laura Dave is the #1 New York Times bestselling author. As I said, we're here to talk about The Last Thing He Told Me, which, by the way, is available in paperback today, listeners. So grab it while you can. Her books have been published in 38 countries. They've been chosen by Reese Witherspoon's Book Club, Indie Next, Book of the Month Club, the Richard and Judy Book Club, Best of Amazon, Best of Apple Books. And this is exciting. The Last Thing He Told Me was chosen as the Goodreads Mystery and Thriller of the Year. It is soon to be a limited series on Apple TV Plus, co-created by Laura herself. Congratulations. We watched the trailer for that today, and it looked phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
I want to quote, there's so many accolades that you've received for all of your writing, but referring to this novel in particular, the New York Times Book Review says, "The Last Thing He Told Me will trigger goosebumps and tears as you flip pages like mad to see how Hannah will handle the bombshells lurking in Bailey's past." And Kristen and I could not agree more. We can't wait to dive down deep with you into this very important and beautiful story.
Oh, thank you. I love being here. So thank you for having me.
Laura, I like to give the listeners kind of a background on your story, which is very hard with yours because there are so many twists and turns, and we obviously aren't going to give away any spoilers. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to kind of set the scene just a little bit.
Great.
Hannah Hall and Owen Michaels have been married for a year, and they live in a floating home in Sausalito, California, where Owen is a coder for a tech company, and Hannah is an artist slash wood turner, which I thought was really interesting part of the story. And she's transplanted from New York. Unexpectedly, one day, a student from the local high school delivers a note to Hannah, and it's from Owen. It says only this: protect her. Hannah has no idea what's going on, but she knows to whom this note refers. It is her stepdaughter, Bailey, the stepdaughter who wants nothing to do with Hannah, her new stepmother. Hannah tries reaching Owen, nothing. The next day, Owen's boss is arrested, and then federal agents show up to Hannah and Owen's home. Hannah is certain that her husband is innocent, of course, but she's starting to learn things, and it is causing a lot of angst and concern about what's going on. She soon realizes that it's just her and Bailey. And Bailey may hold the key to figuring out what has happened to Owen and, of course, the reason why he has disappeared. Is there anything you want to add for us before we kick off our discussion?
No, that's great. That was wonderful.
Wonderful. Then if you are ready, we'll brave the storm. Chris will kick us off.
We're so ready. And so for listeners, both of my questions to Laura today have a lot of quotes from the book because I just found myself feverishly highlighting things. I think the most beautiful thing in the story is we can all relate to it. It evokes emotions and past experiences that we've been longing to talk about. So I have to say, it's a story of love and the importance of relationships. And I cried at the end, just cried. Thank you for those tears because those are fun sometimes.
Oh, that means a lot.
Hannah, our heroine Hannah, lost her grandfather and her mother for very different reasons. She described this feeling of loss as this, like my insides need to get out. And she also said, it leaves you in the same strange place, trying to figure out how to navigate the world without the most important person. Then she twisted it around a little and learned something from that loss. And she said, I wasn't scared of someone leaving me. I was scared that the wrong person would stay. I thought, wow, as the reader. And I want to ask you, I'm so curious, you as the writer of this beautiful character, what did it take for Hannah to understand the importance of this truth? How did these losses strengthen her during the struggle she was about to encounter? And what might we all learn in the real world about clinging to unhealthy relationships and sometimes just finding the strength to say goodbye?
Well, I think that's such an interesting and nuanced question to consider, especially in terms of Hannah. I had seen often in even some of my favorite books and TV shows and movies, you see a woman who is sort of often portrayed as you just said, clinging to someone or clinging to the wrong someone. And from the very beginning of trying to understand Hannah, I wanted her to be living in the opposite space, that sort of her primal injuries, instead of making her cling to the wrong relationships, made her fiercely independent to the point that she almost didn't let anybody in. So the fact that she let Owen in, that she has braved this new life with him and his daughter, very far from where she came, it was very disorienting for her that he turned out to be, at least she has to wonder, different than the man she thought he was. And what does that mean? And where does that leave her? If your fierce independence you've only let go of after many years, she meets him in her late 30s. She comes to their marriage and their relationship, certainly not early, and certainly not out of fear, but out of strength, out of a place where she would have been fine to continue going on by herself. She had a career she loved. She had friends. She had a life she loved in New York. And so she chose him. And to end up in the same place where to end up in the same place in which then you're questioning, but did I make all the out of independence, out of all the right decisions, did I end up in the wrong place anyway? That's a very disorienting feeling. And that's one that she has to grapple with. And it leads me back to the reason I started to write the book in the first place, which is a question of, can we ever know the people we love? Especially the people we love the most, when we can be blinded by who we decide we want that person to be. And ultimately, without spoiling anything or ruining anything, I wanted the answer to that question to be yes, even if it leads us down a track we might not expect.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And could we maybe take it one step further? As the reader, I wanted to believe that Owen chose Hannah because of all of her past struggles and a strength that maybe he even saw in her that possibly she didn't even recognize in herself, but that he foreknew that she might be able to step up to the plate when he sent the little note, protect her. I'm just guessing here as a reader, but I wanted to believe that Owen saw something special in her.
I love that. I think that is definitely part of it. In the answer to the question, can we ever know the people that we love? People are always evolving. So we can know a version of them, but we don't know all of them. We don't know who someone's going to be in 20 years and 30 years. And one of the glories of being with someone over a lifetime is being the witness to that evolution. So part of the answer that I came to, which really answers that question, is, can we know the people we love? Yes and no, but we can believe in the people we love. And right from the beginning, what sort of sets Hannah and Owen's love apart is that they do share that belief in who each is. He sees in her who he knows she can be and who ultimately she will be for his daughter and for him.
Yeah, very profound. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to press in a little bit on something you were just talking about, because your novel really does deal with aspects of sacrifice. And
Mm.
there's a thread that weaves throughout, and that is, what are some of those changes that come about when you marry somebody who already has a child or maybe already has a home? And do you think that couples today account for the amount of compromise and sacrifice that is needed in that kind of a situation? And, this is a world where there's a cultural mandate to find your own happiness. But
Yes.
you've put someone in a situation that is almost the opposite. I was just wondering if you could address that.
Well, I love that, and actually no one's ever asked me that. And I think that has a lot to do with how I was raised, which is, I grew up with two incredibly loving parents who really instilled in me the belief that uh, happiness is fleeting, in that we shouldn't expect or demand to be happy every moment of every day. But what we can count on, or what we should do, is operate with integrity all the time, whether we're feeling good or not good. And I think that helped me understand character, which in this sort of quest that we all now have for happiness and, fleeting joy, we can lose that sense of character. And I like that is really what defines Hannah, that she understands that happiness comes from character, not from feeling, exuberant every moment of every day. So that was something I really wanted to play with and think about. And the other aspect of that, in terms of following happiness, is that we might think that something that's going to make us happy doesn't. And something that will actually bring sort of a deeper sense of purpose might be where we ultimately find our happiness. I really only wanted to write Hannah if she could become the hero of her own life, not the victim of it. And the heroism she finds leads her to a happiness she didn't even know she was longing for.
Yeah, it's so excellent. And I love what you pointed out earlier, and that is she came to this relationship as a whole person. She wasn't
Yeah.
broken, seeking something to fill that void or fix her.
Yes.
And I think we look at those things that we want to fix us and kind of attach happiness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is that happiness? It could be any number of things that could change month by month. Who knows? But I love it. That's why I think people have resonated with your story so much, because she is a beautiful character in so many ways, and that wholeness comes through.
I love
And
hearing.
I have to agree with you. I think sometimes the very best happiness evolves out of difficult situations that you look back and say, I did it. I
Yeah.
overcame it. I made it through. That's sort of a happy satisfaction. Like you said, happiness isn't just this feeling of momentary elation. It can be
Exactly.
triumph and victory, having crossed through some pretty dark valleys. And I love that about that character, Hannah. We all just stepped inside her shoes and was rooting for her and wanted to learn how she was so strong.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you guys just mentioned the word sacrifice, I always, when I'm writing, there's usually a word that in each book that sort of becomes the mandate of the book. And here, sacrifice was that word. The idea that playing with sacrifice and what sacrifice can get us to can be something really beautiful and poignant, hopefully. And I'm actually working on the sequel for the novel now, and the new book, without saying too much, the word would be salvation, which I really think comes on the other side of Hannah and Bailey's journey.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good
It's
to know, because
awesome.
that was one of our questions. We heard rumors of a sequel and we were hoping you were going to say that today.
Yes, yes.
My next question has a little bit more about this marriage, Hannah and Owen. And there was a very wise message in the novel where Hannah said, in one way or another, this is the deal we all sign when we love someone, for better or for worse. It's the deal we have to sign again and again to keep that love. We don't turn away from the parts we don't have to see and sign again just to keep that love. We don't turn away from the parts. We accept them if we're strong enough. We accept them enough not to let the bad parts become the entire story.
Mm.
This hit me so hard in the real world as the reader. For Hannah and for all of us, what is both the strength and maybe the danger in ignoring the bad in someone we love?
That is a great question. And I think that, um, I think we can't, I think we can't ignore the bad, especially if the bad becomes an excuse for someone's negative behavior or a negative pattern of a relationship. Then you can't say, well, everyone's good and bad, and I'm going to put that aside, because that can be very detrimental to you, to your family, to each other. So that is not sort of any sort of messaging that I think I want to suggest, or that Hannah would suggest. I think you have to acknowledge if a relationship is detrimental and walk away from it. What I'm really interested in, though, is that so often we look at someone and we assign to them sort of what you guys were saying, all of these characteristics that we think are going to bring us happiness. And what happens when some of those fall away? Or what happens when all of a sudden, over this lifetime evolution together, you all of a sudden want different things at different points? How do you keep holding the rope? And how do you make sure that you're honoring who you know someone to be if they're really good and they're really good to you, just because some of the details may have changed? Because, that often there is a difference. Almost like, I like to think that we can know someone on a soul level, and that even if some details change in the day to day, that soulness, that soulfulness, I should say, still is the truth. And that becomes something that we still have to honor.
Mm-hmm. That's very wise. And that's something the reader will take with them. I want to add to that what you said before. People evolve, they change, they grow. We're not the same people we were at 18
Yeah.
or at 25. Thank goodness, in a lot of
Yes.
ways. We're wiser. Maybe we've changed our passion. Maybe we've discovered a new gift or a talent. And if our partner isn't with us in this change,
Mhm.
it's not going to last.
Mhm.
That's a very wise statement, that you almost have to allow people to change and grow and see them for their true inner self that remains the same.
Mhm.
Very
I mean,
wise.
because I do think there is something about projection, good and bad, that we often do. We project onto someone like they're going to fix X, Y, and Z in my life. But really, we're all responsible for our own side of the road. We all have to keep it clean. We all have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. And if you're looking to anyone else to fix your happiness or to provide it, that's always going to be a complicated endeavor. With Hannah and Owen, what's going on is, what I find so sad here, and painful is probably a better word, is that what I often see in stories, that I really wanted to sort of look at the opposite of, is you're presented with somebody at the beginning. A woman thinks she knows who her husband is, and it turns out he's the opposite, and he's dangerous and deadly. And then it becomes about getting away from him. Or she finds out that her husband is exactly perfect. But what happens in the in-between? What happens when you don't villainize someone and the story doesn't become a revenge story, but it becomes a love story, just not the love story you thought you were telling? And here in this book too, so much of it changed for me when I had my child. I had been working on this book for years, and then I became pregnant with my son, and I realized that the love story I thought I was telling between Owen and Hannah was really the love story between Hannah and Bailey. And then everything sort of shifted for me. And the nature of what had to happen with Owen changed.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
excellent.
Mhm.
Excellent. I was thinking about how human beings not only project, we also fill in the blanks
Oh,
when we
yes.
want something to be the case with somebody. You know, I would love to kind of pick up on something else that you just said, talking about knowing people. There's times, and it happened in this book, where you are getting information that is contrary to what you believe about someone.
Yeah.
And the way that Hannah handled it, I thought was really interesting, because she was constantly trying to square, to investigate, to really make sense of what she was hearing. but it really spoke to something, and that is a fear that many times people have in relationships, that the other, shoe is going to fall. What else don't I know? And it triggers these feelings of insecurity. And I was
Mm.
wondering, do you have some thoughts on, can we ever really know someone? And if so, what are some really tried and true ways to get to know people on that soul level that you were just talking about?
That's a really interesting question. I think that so much of it is time, is going through seasons with people and allowing for nuance. I think something that's happening right now in our culture, which is so unfortunate, is one of the writers who worked on our show, this really talented young woman, Allegra Caldera, she talked about the flattening of nuance. And that really stuck with me, that, we decide something is one way or something is another way, that a person is one way or a person is another way. And if we don't allow for that nuance, that they can exist in a duality, we're not really allowing ourselves to know someone. Someone can be many, many ways. They can be thoughtful and not materialistic, and they can still love going out for a nice dinner. Like, that's a sort of a strange example, but the reason that comes immediately to mind is you don't have to decide that someone is any one way. What you can do is really get to know them and almost love the contradictions that they present. And I think with Hannah, because of how she grew up, because she was abandoned, because she has devoted her life to an art form that is appealing back, she's so interested in nuance. She's organized her life to understand nuance. And I really love that about her.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. And I love that thought of time being so important, because people do reveal themselves over time.
Mhm.
But
Yes,
also, you have the opportunity to be with people in a restaurant, how they treat the wait staff and how they
exactly.
handle adversity. And that's an underrated piece of advice, I
Yes.
believe.
I want to just ask you one step further from here, because we're talking about getting to know someone else. But I felt as the reader that maybe we don't even know our own selves completely through the
Yeah.
course of life. And I watched Hannah in a really very astounding and wonderful way discover who she maybe really was and didn't realize the strengths that she had. She was smart. She
Yeah.
was super courageous, and maybe that's our life journey too. Maybe we don't even know who we really are until we go through some of these life struggles and
Well, I
difficult.
love that. I think that there's a real truth to that. Jennifer Garner, who's playing Hannah Hall on the show, actually articulated that in a similar way. She said, Hannah is a woman who didn't even realize how strong she was. And I always think about that, because I don't think I was thinking about that consciously when I was working on the book, but that actually feels quite true to me. Like, we only know sometimes what we're capable of when our feet are to the fire. And Hannah, when her feet were to the fire here, learned some really important things about herself. She learned that despite evidence to the contrary, when she believes in someone, she continues to believe in them. And that decision really motivates everything she does after that.
Mhm. Astounding. It's a beautiful novel. I hugely recommend it to all of our readers. It's a book that is going to entertain, but you're going to learn a little something. It's a book that Kristen and I like to call a book that matters, a book that changes your life. And we thank you for that. You told us what you're working on. You gave us a glimpse of the sequel, and we're super excited about that coming out. And I want to tell our listeners, you can connect with Laura Dave. You can find her on Instagram and on Facebook. And remember, paperback is out now. Go get yours. Get ready for the film. We're super excited, and many congratulations to you, Laura.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
This was such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye bye.
Yes, so wonderful talking to Laura Dave. And I know there are so many topics that we wish we could even dive deeper with her, but limited time. There was a quote in the book that said, there are certain things we reveal to the people closest to us, despite what we may or may not know we are telling them. And I thought about this a long while. I thought, I may see someone and I may look at them through their body language, their voice inflection, their emotional state. And I realize no, they're not happy like they're telling me. Or no, there's something more going wrong that they're not telling me. Or all sorts of things that we don't realize we're revealing to each other. Do you ever find that, Kristen?
Yeah, I always look at what people are paying the most attention to, where they're devoting their time. For example, if somebody has a need for security through money or financial things, then a huge part of their focus and their time and attention and conversation is going to be geared towards financial matters. And, there's nothing wrong with that, but they're revealing something to you in that devotion of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they can say, I don't care about money, but what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
And you can substitute anything in there for money. It could be, where your hobbies are, what kind of jobs you pursue, people you pursue. But the important thing is people reveal themselves, as we've talked about on this show several times, in a multitude of ways. But that's one of the things that I look to.
I like that, because what you're saying is words are one thing and words are easy, but actions, well, the age old adage, actions speak louder than words, and they do. So we can say, and sometimes when we're not revealing our true self, we're lying to our own self.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. I feel fine. I have no career issues. I love what I do. We don't want to even admit there's a problem. That's something I found to be very intriguing.
Yeah. I also think in this story, the relationship between a woman and her stepdaughter was really interesting to explore because you're almost set up for failure. You both love the same other parent, but now you almost are at cross purposes in some respects because if that person is devoting attention to the other, they're not devoting it to you. There's almost like a win lose to it, but it doesn't have to be. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right to bring that up, because in today's day and age, there are it's very common to have blended families. Families come in all shapes and sizes. You may have one parent, you may have two, you may have three, you may have step parents, you may be someone who's been through a couple relationships, you may have one relationship. They come in so many different shapes. And yes, this is true. So, what is the family dynamic between a child that you did not give birth to? Pretty much, you're saying, versus someone else. And how does that person fit into your family unit? And how do they feel jealous or competitive to you?
Yeah.
And that was a big topic in this book. The love that Hannah wanted and longed to foster with Bailey, but Bailey as a teenager, treading cautiously, maybe untrusting, testing her. And through difficulties, though, this is how sometimes people grow closer, I think. It's not through the easy times, it's through struggles that we band together.
And you have to too remember that the heart is capable of expanding love. It's not like there's only so much love to give and so much goes to the other spouse and so much goes to the children. We're capable of unlimited love. And I think that's an important concept for blended families to really get hold of. There's something that Laura said too, I wanted to ask you about. She said she wanted Hannah to be the hero of her own life, which I thought was such a cool line. What did you take from that?
That's absolutely what I believe that she was. And like when I said to Laura, I felt like even Hannah evolved and discovered who she was. And I even wondered, was Hannah surprised to discover how much strength she had? And as a reader, I looked at that and thought, oh boy, I hope I would be like her, that if I was pushed into a corner in a very life threatening and difficult situation, that I would rise up to this incredible courage and fortitude and wisdom like she did.
Yes.
I think that's why so many people love this book, because either we see a little bit of ourselves in there or we wish we saw a little bit of ourselves in there.
Yeah, because look at what the opposite is. If you're not the hero of your own life, you might be the villain in your life where you are sabotaging yourself or painting yourself into a corner where you don't need to be. I know I feel like this. Lots of people feel like this, where they don't feel like they have options. And, that's where you become a victim or the anti-hero in your life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's some wisdom right there. And yeah, so I don't know, I can't look at every person's life scenario, but I always say this, listen, life is short. If you don't have an option, make an option. You've got limited time and it goes by so quick, speaking from someone who's a little older here. So make an option, go for it, try it. And if you fail, okay, so what? You failed. At least you tried it. Try again. Maybe you learned something from it. but there's so much life truth, I feel like, in this book. I can't wait for the film.
I know, me too. It looks phenomenal.
So thanks everybody for joining us. Now, you know what I'm going to say now, and I feel like I should have a little theme song with this announcement. We're going to have a shout out to our incredibly talented producer, sound engineer extraordinaire, Mr. Mark Carey. There he is on YouTube, live and in person.
Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. We'll see you again next week.
And I'm going to leave you with a few storm predictions to pique your interest, because we have a super exciting spring ahead. David Baldacci, Simply Lies. Susan Meisner, Only the Beautiful. Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray with The First Ladies. Chris Bojalian, The Lioness. Alka Joshi, The Perfumist of Paris. Madeline Martin, The Keeper of Hidden Books. Bryn Turnbull, Paris Deception. Katie Quinn and Janie Chang, The Phoenix Crown. Heather Gudenkoff, The Overnight Guest. And Bert Digg, Ellie Banks, also known as Maisie Yates, One Little Spark, and Matthew Quirk, Inside Threat.
I love it. And listeners, as we've been talking about, we just keep growing every week. We're so thankful to you. And we're very grateful that you are sharing links and telling people about this podcast. You know, these are issues that we love to talk about. We cover so many important things and interesting things and entertaining things. But these are the kinds of conversations that are wonderful to have with people. So we just encourage you to continue sharing those socials for us. And also, of course, you can stay on the radar with us by looking at our social media, by engaging with us on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also YouTube. You can search for Bookstorm and podcast, and there we are. Until next time, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep into life-changing fiction.